If you have a cell phone, please turn it to, either shut it off or turn it to silent, vibrate. And I swear I did mine tonight. Yeah, so if it goes off, it's a ghost. All right. Please join me in a moment of silence. Councilwoman Reed, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure will.
Thank you, ma'am.
Seems like it's falling off. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Domingo, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Lawler. Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atchison.
Here. Okay, first item is approval of the agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Councilman Williamson.
I'd like to amend item E, discussion approval, first reading ordinance 2020-03. I'd like it to state discussion of ordinance 2020-03 and strike out any action from that item.
Okay. Are there other modifications to the agenda this evening? Okay. In regards to the item A, which is the adoption of the fee schedule, at some point, council is going to need to establish whatever the permit fee for that ordinance that allows people to have an open sidewalk and whatnot, but we'll take that up later at a separate. Okay. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda? If not, all those that approve of approving the agenda as modified to make item E discussion only, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item, presentations and recognitions, and Project Rising Tide, final report presentation by Ms. Linda Ledoux.
Good evening, council, city manager, mayor, city clerk, everyone here this evening, and everyone listening at home. This is going to be a very brief presentation. I'm really here just to share about a celebration for Project Rising Tide. So to introduce myself, I was the Community Development Fellow last year for Albion, and was able to work with many people in this effort, and so we want to take some time out to celebrate the efforts of everyone who were involved in that. So on Monday, March 23rd at 4 p.m. here at the Ludington Center, we will be taking some time to do just that, but it also coincides well with Albion's certification as a redevelopment-ready community, and both of those are major milestones on the city's journey toward revitalization. And so we hope that everyone can come out and take some time to learn more about those initiatives. If you are curious and want to learn more, CEDM, the Community Economic Development Association of Michigan, has published a report that is available on the Rising Tide Albion's Facebook page. And I just wanted to also take a moment to share how much of an honor and privilege this really has been to serve in this capacity as a liaison. And I want to also thank Haley Snyder, Christine Bauman, Ryan Hobson, and Amy DePrez, who are also helping behind the scenes to coordinate this event, along with other state officials. Are there any questions for me?
Councilman Clark.
So I keep hearing you speaking as if you're speaking in past tense.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Does that mean it's not going to continue, and why?
So yes, so the Rising Tide initiative is a 2-year initiative, and so we began. The governor came in March of 2018, and that jump-started the process. And so the fellowship, which was what I was formerly a part of, was a 1-year term, and so that actually officially ended in December. And I had a meeting I didn't have it. I was able to help facilitate a meeting in December to share more specific things that have happened, and this presentation will also go over those, giving a snapshot of everything that has happened during that time frame. The goal of Rising Tide is to have cities be sustainable on their own. So I'm more than happy to go into details regarding the transition plans that I've given to CDM, who really facilitated this process, and continue the dialogue in other ways. So the actual Rising Tide designation is something we graduate from, and
Okay.
that's what we're celebrating.
Okay, so there's no need to go forward,
Under that name.
right?
So the purpose is rebuilding the city's economic framework,
Right.
and they did that through community development, which you can look to the city of Detroit, where I'm studying right now, to see that that's much more than economics, to rebuild a community. And so that's why our community also, without the leadership of a city manager in a position to guide those efforts, it looked different for ours than it did for the other cities across the state, but every city looks different when they're doing these efforts.
Okay, because I was just wondering, because I would like to see if, me speaking personally, that if we can keep that initiative and going in whichever facet it needs to move, that we need to.
So
look at that.
I have provided, part of my role was providing recommendations for how to continue the momentum and really continue to build on the work that was generated through this process. So I would love to see those taken up, and they're closely aligned with the city manager's goals as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Are there other questions from council? Thank you for your hard work, and thank you serving as the Project Rising Tides Fellow and helping the city move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is an update on the Grocery Desert Committee, the second Grocery Committee with Councilwoman Clark, and then you'll probably go right into your Precinct 1 meeting update.
So currently, we have spoken with one gentleman that is interested in coming to the area. I'm not going to divulge who it is or what store it is at this time, because we will be meeting again on this Thursday, and each one of us has spoken to other grocery stores. Most of these people are independent, so they're not big franchises, so but they have well-kept stores, and what we decided as a committee is we wanted to go in and view, take a view of the store, how it was kept, what the prices were, and things like that. And then from there, if we decided that it was something that met the needs of what we saw in the survey, then the next step was to invite them here. So again, we had one gentleman come, very interested, and we have 3 other ones that we're trying to initiate, because we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, because we want this to happen, not just to be an effort, but we want this to happen. So, and as far as my meeting at Precinct 1, it went quite well. We had a representation come and speak to, there was about 25 members there, and we had a representation come from Neighborhood Inc. to speak about the funds that were available and how they could apply, and explain things to them about how she could help people that had that were income qualified to get things fixed in their homes. And most everyone there filled out an application. There was some talk about the codes and the ordinance in the city, and that was a discussion that was quite interesting, almost as exactly as the one that we had last week. And we're going to meet again in April, but it was a good meeting for me. It was a larger group of people, and we also had Darwin there, Elle was there as a support, and of course our city commissioner was there. He's always there as a support. So it went quite well. There was just a few questions that weren't answered, but it was an upbeat meeting, and I think that's a good move for my precinct, because it's gradually grown from 2 or 3 people. So, And whenever I have one, please feel free to come and, be a part of it so you can see what other people feel in other areas or even voice your opinions. I'd be happy to have you there.
Quick question, what seemed to be the biggest concern or item of interest, area of interest for the folks in your precinct?
So a lot of them were there because they knew of the presentation that was going to be said, but the code enforcement was a big thing. It was a very big thing. And the sidewalk. And it was explained thoroughly by Darwin and myself of what we're doing with that money and why we chose to do what we're doing with that money. And they seem to be happy and settled with the answers that we gave them. Didn't you think, Darwin?
I agree with you, Counselor.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions by council? Okay, next up is Mr. Ben Wade from the Malibu Microbrewery to give us a presentation on the Peabody Newgrass Festival.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Albion Malibu Brewing Company is proposing hosting a new event on July 18th, 2020. That will be an all-day bluegrass festival, or newgrass festival, as has been dubbed a kind of a spin-off of that genre, which is some kind of younger jazz jam-inspired musicians kind of adopting bluegrass and taking it into some pretty exciting new ways. We are currently in talks with about 6 bands who are very interested and excited to get this going. What we would like to do is to utilize the parking lot directly south of the brewery, behind the Peabody Black, for the day for this event. We would fence off the parking lot in order to be able to control the flow of traffic, both for tickets and for beer service from the brewery in the parking area, and bring bands in, have food available, seating available outside for the duration of the day. We've had some preliminary talks with some sponsors that have expressed interest. We're looking at this being probably a $30-ish ticket to attract fans of this genre from around the state. For any of you that haven't been to music at the Malibu, we do live music every Monday. We've been doing bands about every 2 weeks. So I've booked somewhere around 80 acts since we've opened. We've had great success with music. We've attracted genres and performers initially from around Albion, Jackson, Marshall, and then around the state of Michigan. And since then, we have frequent contacts and interactions with booking agencies from all over the country. We have acts that we've hosted from Colorado, Florida, bands coming in this summer from a variety of areas that are learning about Albion's music scene and learning about what we're doing and getting really excited about it. So what we want to do is continue to grow that. The bluegrass specifically, as we've hosted, one, we kind of caught some national acts' attention that have come to us from Colorado, and we've found them to be huge draws. It's a genre that has very avid following from their fans. So when we had the bands here, we got people that showed up from an hour away who learned of this particular show on a pretty short notice and drove to Albion to see it. So we feel like expanding on that and doing a focus on that for a day is something that we could do and attract people from throughout the state to come into Albion for the day and spend a full day downtown and hopefully have a great time listening to music and enjoying our downtown. What we need from the city is permission for the use of the lot for the day. I'm aware of the ordinance that was passed that allows us to request permission to use public space for service. What we have to do as a microbrewery is essentially apply to the MLCC to define that entire property's boundaries as our beer garden for the day. So it will be a temporary authorization from MLCC to use that space under our existing license that pulls all of the liability, the licenses for MLCC under Albion Malibu Brewing Company for the day. Any questions or anything I can answer?
Councilman Smith?
Will you be closing off Ash Street at all?
We are interested in closing off Ash Street mostly for safety of pedestrian flow. What we think is if you look at the way the entry and exit to that parking lot is, That's going to be foot traffic coming in and out, and we think closing Ash Street from that parking lot to Superior to allow for foot traffic. The fence won't encompass Ash, so that it'll be really more of a walkway coming to and from. Right now, our proposal is actually maybe to invite a few art vendors or something to set up there to kind of make it an interesting area for people to kind of coming and going and being around the festival to come in and out.
My only real thought about that is that there is a business across Ash Street from you, and there are residences there. I just wanted to be sure they wouldn't be encumbered for getting in and out of their business work.
And we will absolutely work with them and talk to them. We have talked with Century 21 in the corner in the past when we've done things. And again, this is Saturday afternoon, evening, when they typically don't have hours. The residents we've spoken both. Currently, we've spoken to the resident directly south of us, who turns out is a huge bluegrass fan and is quite excited to be able to sit on his porch and listen to music all day. We do know the resident that's across the road from us as well on the other side, and we've had a very good relationship with him. And in the past, we've given them notice well in advance that we intend to do, and tried to work with them if they have any concerns to make sure that we can accommodate them. When we did our anniversary, or not the anniversary party, pardon me, the Summerfest music, we did outside music down there, and it was kind of directly across the resident home. We actually went over there and offered to pay for a room at the Marriott for the night if they were interested in not having the music there. And we will abide by, of course, noise ordinances, and this is not a very loud style of music, and we don't plan on going this all night long either. We're expecting this one to probably wrap up between 10 and 11 at night.
And I spoke with that same gentleman, and I got the same response.
Okay.
Councilman Clark, yes?
That's what I was gonna say, same thing as Al said, just to let the neighbors know around that you're gonna be doing it, and it shouldn't be a problem. And are you thinking that maybe having public safety, patrol a little bit?
I did, yes. I did reach out to Scott Kipp, both to notify him and to ask for his advice and input on how they do that. He said that typically with the festivals, Walk the Beat and days like that, they tend to put a couple extra foot officers on to kind of be in the area and be advised. Kind of related to that, and I guess as a bit of a side note, I've met with the organizer for the Marshall Bluegrass Festival, and actually the Calhoun County Fairgrounds, where they do one over there the week after this. They're interested in helping to cross-promote and getting some of those people in early to come as fans, but their feedback was also out of everything that they do at the fairgrounds, that the bluegrass crowds intended to be their most low-key. It was a very welcoming event for them. They had very, very little issues with their bluegrass festival in the past. It seemed to be a very good audience and a very good genre for them to tap into.
Councilman Spicer.
Thank you. Ben, did you say what time the festival was going to take place?
We're looking at starting at about noon on Saturday, and it would run until, depending on the schedule and the acts and exactly when the music ends, we're targeting trying to wrap it up between 10 and 11 p.m.
Thank you.
Excited.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, I think the ordinance says 10, but I could be wrong on that.
And
Whatever it is.
We're more than happy to work with
Great.
whatever the ordinance requires.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, we have no public hearing this evening. Next section, public comments. Individuals wishing to make a public comment on an agenda item, if it's on the agenda, please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes, and ask everyone to show proper courteous and don't disrupt.
My name is Jim Stahl. I'm interested in your rental certification ordinance. It's running out of time, but how many of you council members own property here in town? All of you?
Yeah.
All right. Rental property?
No.
No.
Used to.
I don't blame you. But anyway, all right. Anyway, I've noticed, you got a couple things, the license thing, I don't need it, don't want to pay for it, don't need a license to own my own property. I've been a rental landlord for 20 years, 30 years, about 30. As far as the class, I don't want to have to go take no class. I don't have time for a class. I work 7 days a week. I don't have time for it. I don't want to have to be told what to do by people. I take care of my house when I can. Another thing you got here, you're trying to bring us to international code, that's what you're saying, your international property maintenance code. They're out of line. Our houses are old. My house is 100 years old. It's gonna cost me $30,000 to bring that to code. You're gonna come there and you're gonna have these people come here and harass me and give me a time limit. And I'm gonna run, and I can't afford it. And I can't afford to do it in your time frame. And I don't need it. You understand, it's more stress and pressure than anybody needs in this town. There's 4 or 5 people in this town that want this, and 4 or 5 of them are sitting on this council right now, because nobody else wants it. Nobody. You know, there's nobody come down here and complain to you about this. Nobody. This was a failed policy, started under an ex-mayor. The only reason you're pushing it, because the ex-mayor wanted it. He's gone. It should be done. It should be gone. It's unneeded. I've been here I lived here my whole life. I was born and raised here. I've been a landlord for 30 years. I'm not hurting them people. They're happy. My people are fixed income people. They can't afford the rent to go up. They can't afford to move. I can't afford to fix it when you want me to fix it. I can afford to fix it when I can. That's when I can afford to fix it. If it's something bad and it's something real bad, I'll fix it. If it's something little crap that you're going to be nitpicking at me about, like my wiring, like anything else, I'm not going to be able to do it. So either I do it to your time frame, or I just put this thing being a rental house. It's just not going to be a rental house. So when you take all these people's property, because they can't pay it and they can't fix it and they can't do it in your timely manner, and you take all these fines and this $200 a day, $100 a day fines that you're going to put on these people, when they can't afford that, and you put these $1,000 worth of fines on them and they let their house go, and you knock it down, how much property tax are we going to get out of it then? Nothing. When they knock it down, when you spend $14,000, $15,000 to knock this house down, what are we going to get out of it? $200 for the lot tax? You're not even going to get that, because you're going to own the lot, and then you're going to have to maintain the lot, and you'll probably sell it to the neighbor for $100. Yeah, $150 a day, $300 a day, $500 a day. Out of line, man. It's out of hand. This is Albion. This ain't Battle Creek, ain't Jackson, ain't Lansing. Little town. Little town. Appreciate your time. I'm out of time, it looks like.
Yes, sir, you're out of time.
All right, there it is. I called y'all and talked to you on the phone in person this summer.
Are there more public comments this evening on agenda items?
Hello, my name is Donisha. I'm currently residing at 119 North Superior Street, and I just kind of wanted to just touch bases on the same thing, agenda item number letter E, just more so in the way of expenses and who will be able to afford this, just as myself working very hard to pay for my rent and things as such. More so wondering how much would this impact myself as a renter, and then to just knowing that this is Albion, and so I would hate to see people being pushed out of their residence or landlords not being able to own their properties anymore because they're trying to make a living for themselves as well. That is more so my concern when it comes to this, because if we do already have something in place, is there a way to make that work better, a little bit more efficiently? When there are issues that arise as far as codes and enforcements, are there ways to go after those specific property owners for that specifically, and without it having to impact people like myself who may not be able to afford my rent going up for something like this? So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comments this evening?
LaVeda Louise, 917 Luther Drive. Personally, I don't have any rental property, but I would rather see the code enforcement taken care of rather than, because that would include every house in this town. And if you bring the code enforcement up to where it should be, you'd have a much cleaner town. I don't see tacking something else onto land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Geyer. I reside at 904 Irwin Ave. I've been to many of the meetings that this committee has held with rental property owners, and my theory is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And I really don't feel that they've been listened to. We all want blighted properties out of the way. this is not the way to do it. And I really ask you before you vote tonight to consider, are you really doing what's best for all of the citizens in Albion? Are you creating something that you can't afford to continue? And are you going to make the problem worse? Our bottom line is code enforcement is where you start. Start there, see what progress you can make, and then go from there. Thank you.
More public comments this evening?
Brian Mull, 24772 J Drive South, Tomer, Michigan. I come today to, out of respect for what the council's trying to achieve, but having been to many, many meetings, I want to point out some facts, and these are just the facts. And in over 18 months, we've not gotten any clearly defined written goals of what the subcommittee wants to achieve from rental registration. If you don't have clearly defined goals and objectives, I can see no point to it. It doesn't accomplish anything. I mean, it's kind of like going to the doctor and saying, fix me. The doctor says, what's wrong with you? Well, I don't know. Where does it hurt? I don't know. Just run every test you possibly can and see if there's anything wrong with me. When you can't go to the doctor like he's going to say, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you need to fix. Tell me why you need to fix it. The second point is we've asked, and I've heard this from two other people, what needs to be fixed that you can't achieve with the current city ordinances and the current city building codes if you choose to enforce them. Do we need another layer of bureaucracy that piles this on to the hardworking men and women and tenants of Albion at this time? The third thing, this is just a concrete example. The other day I ran into Juanita from, everybody knows Juanita from Beautify Albion. God love that woman. She came up to me and she said, Brian, look at Albion. It's the middle of winter, but they're taking down these dead trees. They're putting a roof on that house. Somebody's remodeling the kitchen there. You guys are fixing this house up. Albion's looking better, and that's my point. Right now, things are looking better in Albion. It's going the right direction, and I've heard other people say, I think this needs to be tabled. I think let's see what happens. Let's enforce the current codes fairly and see where it goes. You will decrease investment. You will take people out of Albion that are revitalizing it right now and turn them away, and I don't want to see that happen. I respect what they're trying to accomplish, but I do not feel at this time it's the right way to go about it, and I don't think that you will achieve what you think you want to achieve. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Elaine Berrygut. I reside at 307 South Ionia Street in Albion, and I've got 2 rental houses. But I just wanted to say, my husband and I both work other employment to support ourselves. We keep our rent low enough to where when the houses are paid off, this is an investment for our retirement. So this isn't our source of living. We don't withdraw anything out of our rental houses. That being said, our rent is low. And some people can't afford even what we have at right now. And we work with them, they get behind in rent, get caught up. We don't charge additional fees for late fees, but anything additional that we're gonna have to pay, we can't pay it out of pocket. We're gonna roll it over into the tenants. So you're gonna put a hardship on the tenants that we have. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hello, Cheryl Mull, 24772 J Drive South in Homer. Anytime that we have seen a city bring in rental registration and we have properties in different areas with rental registration, it does increase the rents dramatically. It also decreases the supply of available housing for the tenants in the area, which I don't really think is the goal that we're going for. And what we're ending up doing is we're taking the money from our hardworking men and women of Albion, and then we are sending the tenants' money to a different city and to a different state. As you all know, Safe Built, who we've been talking about doing this, is based out of Athens, and their home office is in Colorado. We hate to see Albion economy support another area. We want to keep Albion's economy in Albion because great things are happening here, but when we take our tenants' money and send it away. They can't spend it here. They can't go down to the Bone. They can't take their kids to Kids R Us. They can't eat in the restaurants. So we would like to see the tenants be able to have that extra money and not send it out of the area. And we've been to most all of the meetings, and I know that our tenants are not here in support of rental registration. And we hope that the city council would consider the precinct voters, if you do pass this, that it may put an extreme hardship on them. And we hope that that doesn't happen for our tenants. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. More public comments this evening?
Hi, Sabrina Witt, 218 Pine Street. I'm a tenant, and if this bill gets passed and if my rent gets raised, it would allow me to have extra money. I would have no choice but to move. With extra money, I've done landscaping, I've invested in my property in the house. So I hope that you consider all the people in Albion, because everybody mostly is on a limited income and budget. Thank you.
Are there further public comments?
Good evening. Bill Dobbins, 15901 Dobbins Drive, Albion, Michigan. Item E, as I said in our last meeting, I'm 100% in favor of anything that improves the housing stock in Albion. As Brian mentioned, we have codes on the books that are ignored, certainly are not enforced, and it's totally confusing why we would put a new layer of government in place to do something that we've already got tools to do. I also agree with Brian's comments that, you know, who knows what the goals are? How do we know what success looks like in 6 months or in a year or 3 years or 5 years? When we asked the question last week, 2 weeks ago, how many rental units are there actually in Albion? Nobody even knows how many we got. We don't have any idea what the problem is that we're trying to solve with this legislation. Are we trying to kill an ant with a sledgehammer? Nobody knows. So I think those things are discouraging to the landlord organization. We were asked last time to come respectfully to discuss it in an open forum. We did that. I didn't hear anybody speak in favor of it. And at this point, I think it becomes a credibility issue. The comments were made by City Council. This is just a draft. This isn't the real legislation. Comments were made, you know, sort of a tip of the hat. Who's in favor of it? Comments were made like, I think we ought to get a different set of eyes on it and take a look at it. So very insightful comments. And then 2 weeks later, it shows up on the agenda saying reading and approval, and totally undermined. So I assume the city manager has just decided to take it on himself to sort of ram this thing through, which I think is disrespectful and undermines the credibility that we're trying to build within this community to work hand in hand, city government with private people, and get us to a place that we're heading towards. I think this would be a setback, and clearly I'm not in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public comments this evening? Okay, so we'll close the public comments. May I have a motion to go into closed session? City Attorney requests a closed session under the Opens Meeting Act, Section 15.268H, Public Act 267 of 1976 as amended, to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, go into closed session. And just for clarification, I had communication with the city manager. He's not trying to force anything down. His intent was to bring it forward so that we could have a discussion and give direction whether it is to table this, redo it, or whatever, so. I should have made that clear at the outset. Okay. Yes.
By the next meeting.
Okay. Welcome back. All right. Discussion. All right. Mr. Mingo, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed.
Here. Here.
Smith.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atchison.
Here. Okay. Next item is consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar will be voted on as one unit. First item, approval of study session minutes, January 29th. Approval of regular session minutes, February 3rd. And approval of study session minutes, February 10th. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those are approved. Okay, first item for discussion, approval to adopt the fiscal year 2020 City of Albion fee schedule as presented and/or modified, and authorize administration to implement the fee schedule as adopted. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support? Thank you. Okay, discussion. Is there any discussion by council? Councilmember Smith?
I do notice on the fee schedule that's been presented, even after the discussions we have had for the past 2 to 3 meetings, and legal opinion given by our city attorney, we are being handed the exact same fees and nothing has been changed. And I wonder why that is.
I believe that question is directed at you, City Manager.
I'm sorry, Counselor, could you be a little more specific? Are you referring to the sewer?
If we go into the cemetery section, we still have everything in there for columbariums, columbarium opening, and all that stuff. And for cremation, we do not have a crematory. And on the sewer connection, I believe the legal opinion given by the city attorney pretty much said that that was not part of the sewer demand change from April 1st, 2019.
Counselor, what I would request that you do, if you want to remove those items from the fee schedule, that you make that part of a motion for adoption of the fee schedule.
Councilman Williamson.
Okay, so just real quick, for Councilor Smith's clarification, the grave opening, closing it's for grave opening and closing the cremation piece. So, so yes, you're correct. We don't have a place where we do cremations, but it's for the grave opening because it's a much smaller location. So that's why the fee is smaller than a regular burial plot opening. Secondly, I think at the last meeting, I was pretty clear, and it seemed like there was some consensus amongst the city manager and folks on council that we were going to bring a finished product to this meeting. And there seems to be more questions about sewer and water, and I'm just wondering, like, do we have to pass a resolution to get people in a room to talk about this outside of council? Because, again, for the 3rd or 4th time now, we've brought an incomplete product with lots of questions. So I'm just wondering what it's going to take for people like me. These fees are fine. I've seen these fees before this year. This is part of a process previously where department heads are talking about we need to work on steadily getting back to where we need to be on rates for our services and different hookups and things like that. But if there is an issue that individual council members have, Darwin, are you available to meet with people and talk about this? Because the last time, at the last meeting, I specifically had asked you guys to get together and figure this out, and I'm just wondering, did that happen?
It has not.
The city manager and I have discussed these outside. You did not ask us to get together. I do understand what a cremation is. add, but we had discussed this before, and as I say at the last meeting, the city attorney did give an opinion that the sewer connection fee had nothing to do with the 7.5% increase with the sewer demand fee. So that's just where I'm standing on that.
If, I'm sorry.
Councilman Williamson?
I'm interested in hearing from members about if they're ready to pass the fee schedule. I actually don't have any problems with the fees presented, and we've been without an updated fee schedule since this has started. So I would be interested in hearing from all council members about where they are at in passing this.
Councilwoman Spicer?
Thank you. Can I just hear the repeat from Councilman Smith, the ones that he had issue with?
We don't have a page number on here, but if you thumb back to where you'll first start seeing things in explanation of change, Council approved on 4/1/2019. That will be on sewer connection or connecting new sewer lines into the city.
Okay.
That was what I had asked the city manager for a explanation on and for his legal opinion. And his opinion, as I recall it, was that the resolution that was passed on 4/1/2019 was for the sewer demand charges and did not contain sewer connection fees for newly connected lines.
So then, that statement, or that insert under explanation of change, where it states council approved on 4/1/2019, should not be there, should be removed. Is that what you're saying?
To my opinion, yes.
Okay, so, any other, is that related to all the comments in the explanation of change section? You think they all should be?
No, ma'am, just the part that's sewer connection.
Just the sewer connection, okay.
The sewer demand is correct.
Okay.
Very convoluted schedule to get there to what the increases are, but Mr. McCleary and I did have a discussion on that. He did explain to me how it actually does come about. I'm not sure I still understand it, but yes, I do know where he's coming from and what he means by the explanations that were given for that. I won't even try to repeat them.
So then, the fee schedule could be approved with the modification that we remove the reference in the explanation of change sections, that under the sewer connection that you take issue with. Would you have a problem with that?
I would be fine with that, and I will yield on all of the changes.
Okay.
If that needs to be an emotion, I will make a motion that we remove the explanation of change in all sewer connection items.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 7 removals under the explanation of change in the sewer connection description, correct?
Actually be 12.
12? 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There's some on the previous page.
Okay, gotcha. 12.
All right. So do you want to amend your motion to modify to move to approve the 2020 fee schedule as modified to remove those explanatory notes? You made the motion to approve it, would you?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So it's moved to approve the 2020 fee schedule as modified to remove those explanatory notes from the sewer connections. Is there support?
Support.
Further discussion? Okay. Please call the roll. Oh, City Attorney.
So, just to be clear, are you just removing the notes, or are you removing the modified 2020 changes to those fees?
Moving the notes.
Moving the notes.
It should be removing the fees.
Because that's not what you're voting on. You're voting on
Right.
to remove the notes.
But not.
I just want you guys to be clear on what you're voting on and what the motion, you know, if you're looking to remove the change in the fees, you might have to modify your motion.
So the Councilman Williamson modified his motion to remove the notes. And I believe it was Councilwoman Spicer that seconded it?
I did.
Okay. All right, so that's the motion. It's moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
No.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Atchison.
Yes. All right. Item B, request approval of memorandum of understanding between the Calhoun County Land Bank Authority and the City of Albion, setting forth the terms and conditions for the city's contributions to the Union Steel Building demolition project, property located at 501 North Berrien Street, Albion, Michigan, in the total amount of $300,000 to be paid in certain increments over a 5-year period between 2020 and 2024, and to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the city. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. City manager, did you want to make a comment or an explanation on the MOU?
Your Honor, just that the MOU was in keeping with the approvals that council previous gave to this item.
And the city attorney has a comment, question?
Yeah, I was just gonna indicate that after some back and forth with the county's corporation council, I'm good with the language. We made some changes and came to an agreement, so we should be good.
Okay. Any questions or comments by council? Okay. Councilman Williamson.
Just wondering, when is it coming down?
Sometime this year.
We're excited. Sorry, we're excited.
I'm excited too. Krista Trout Edwards, Director of the Land Bank Authority. We have signed the contract with pitch companies and provided that to the city manager. Their start date is the first week of March, weather permitting. So very soon it will be starting. So that's all in place. Per the MOU, the city also requested a copy of their insurance, so that all has been provided. The last thing that we're working on is just the issue of the cap. So I was talking with those folks today to try and deal with that too. I do know that our fence was also stolen yesterday from the site, so it cannot come down soon enough. And we're working with the city to put some temporary fencing around that collapsed area over the next couple of weeks. But yes, the start date in the contract is the first week of March, but weather permitting.
So I have a question, because this is new to me. So when we take a building down, because a lot of things can be recycled, is there any recycling done with any of the materials that can be? Or
Sure.
is there any available that can be recycled and
Yeah, it really depends on the site and what's going on at the site. Most of our contractors recycle concrete as long as it's not painted with any lead-based paint. They often pull steel and other materials out because they can take that to the landfill and they don't have to pay landfill fees. So it's all done by our contractors, and that's how they reduce the cost, and we're able to get better demolition bids. So they do try and recycle as much as they can. Anything else?
Any further questions by council? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Please read the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
yes?
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Request approval to direct administration to take no action on renewal of the City of Albion's The Smart Community trademark with the U.S. Patent and Trade Office, and allow the trademark to expire due to a finding by the City Council that the trademark is no longer advantageous to the city. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Discussion by council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Discussion approval, first reading of ordinance 2020-02, and ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article 4, to amend sections 22-181 and 22-183, outdoor and sidewalk cafes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there support?
Support. Just remind you that it was amended to say discussion only. Are we on item E?
This is cafe.
No, no.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Item
no,
O.
no.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay. City Attorney, oh, Councilman Smith?
I only had a question. Would this be for food service only or for retail establishments as well that may want to do like a sidewalk sale or something like that?
That's a good question.
This applies, so the side, I can tell you what we have an ordinance definition for sidewalk cafes, and I believe, bear with me for a moment. So sidewalk cafe means an outdoor dining area located on a public sidewalk that provides waiter, waitress service. So that has to do with food service. Outdoor cafe, outdoor dining area located on private property. It's all tailored towards businesses that have food service. We could certainly craft another ordinance to address if you're thinking about like retail establishments doing things outdoors. That's something we can add, but this specific article is tailored towards food service entities.
No need to go into that now.
Councilwoman Reed?
I'm just wondering, what are the qualifications for that? Because I've seen some outside that have had the fences that go across that's like 4 to 5 feet tall, to where you're separated from whoever's walking by on the sidewalk. And then I've seen some that didn't have it at all. So what is?
In terms of fencing?
Yes.
So, it depends. We have a separate ordinance that isn't part of the modifications here, that sets the standards. They have to be generally located adjacent to the establishment. There's a waiver process that can be done with that. They have to be set up in a way where they're not creating a hazard in terms of sight lines with traffic, especially being located next to roads. Now, I can tell you, when we're dealing with, say, an establishment that might serve alcohol beverages, the Liquor Control Commission has their own regulations aside from any ordinance that we might have that's going to require that to be a fenced area so that the public can't access that area. I believe that the way it's set up is it has to be restricted in some way. Most often you see having to go into the business and then into the fenced area. So that's actually regulated at a state level. Everything that is placed outside, so if they put fencing outside, it does have to be removable. It can't be something that's permanent. But I don't, in going over our ordinance here, I don't think we mandate at a local level fencing other than having a temporary barrier. I don't think we say, hey, you have to have a 6-foot high chain link fence. It just has to be a barrier that would prevent the public from entering restricted areas, but while still allowing for ingress and egress on the sidewalk.
That's it.
Okay. And so just briefly, unless there are any other questions, I just wanted to tell you. So there are 2 changes that we basically made with the ordinance. One was very simple, and that is the council's aware we did basically a complete zoning overhaul. So the previous ordinance had this set up so that it would only apply to businesses in the B1, B2, B3 districts, which no longer exist anymore. That has been changed for sidewalk cafes to be the CBD district, and then for outdoor cafe, CBD or MU, mixed use. So we made that change. And then additionally, at Councilmember Williamson's request, we had a discussion about this. We've expanded the time frame for having the outdoor cafes. We've expanded it to March 1 to December 1. Given that we've had unseasonably warm weather. Now, outside of those, I don't know. I think we'd probably be pushing it weather-wise. I don't know that many businesses would stay open beyond those, but so we've extended those on either side. And other than some other minor changes, I mean, those were the substantial changes that we made to the ordinance.
Okay. Any further questions by council? Okay. So, no other questions? Please read the roll.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, now we're up to item E, which I remind my colleagues is been modified to, this is discussion only. This will not be taking a vote to approve the ordinance on the rental certifications. Discussion, the first reading of ordinance 2020-03, an ordinance to add chapter 17, licensed to operate single, two-family, and multifamily rental structures. So this is to discuss rental certification, rental registration. Okay. Any councilman wish to begin, make comments? We've heard from a variety of members of the public today and last week. Councilman McClark.
So I have heard the public and the landlord speaking about the extra fees and the concern of that. And I do remember from the meeting that we had last week when there was other representation that talked about how they do it on a 3-year and a 6-year plan, which seemed to be less expensive, way less expensive than what was being talked about initially. One of the things that I think most landlords don't realize, we're not trying to come down or make it harder for the landlords that comply and do things the way things should be done. However, there is, as most of you have talked about, the code compliance things that we as the city, I'm sure, are going to address that and get that straightened out. But there's other things that we have underlying things that are going on that we have not discussed and brought out about some of the concerns of a percentage of landlords that don't show up. So we need to, when you meet with the committee, maybe they'll bring some of these things out more further and get your assistance on how you think the city could move forward and do things better before we propose and put anything into place. Because I really appreciate more, for people that do things right, then sometimes, and with you being peers with one another, it would be helpful for us to be able to decide, other than doing the compliance with the code, the city codes, what's some other ideas that you think that could help us to be able to fix some current situations? Because as I spoke before, my idea of what will this look like, I think everybody's property should look the same and everybody's standards should be the same. And we all live in houses that are kept well and have upkeep in there, keep our properties well. So I would like to see when you ride down Eden Street or when you ride down Erie Street or wherever you're riding, that there's a unified look in our city. As it is improving, it looks improved everywhere instead of just certain areas.
Councilman Williamson.
So I'm going to just go back to what I was talking about at the open forum, the study session we had last week. I want to say I hear everyone when we talk about code enforcement. I am probably one of the most frustrated people around code enforcement in the city, and I think what I said last time was that maybe we do need to set up a work group or someone to talk about code enforcement with the city manager and the department that's in charge of that, to figure out how do we prioritize what code gets enforced, right? There are so many rules and laws and regulations. What are the priorities in code enforcement? We don't know that. So, and we also know that we anecdotally know that it's applied unfairly or done on a complaint basis. And both of those things aren't the right way to do business. So I think code enforcement is important. I also would like to point out that I think the intentions for the rental, when I say rental certification, it just feels like a bad word, but it's not. When it originally started, there were really admirable ideas and goals behind moving that process along. And it was saying, we believe that safe and healthy housing is important for everybody in our community. We understand that the Taj Mahal cannot be afforded by everyone, but that we should have some standards. I still agree with those principles moving forward, and I think one of the reasons we've made rental certification a priority at the city is that we're saying this is a priority that everybody have a decent place to live. Again, doesn't have to be the McMansion, but they have to have a safe place to live. And so I think those are really good goals for the committee moving forward. That being said, I think over the next couple of weeks, the committee that exists, who's been working on this for so long, like I said, for like 18 months now, putting in the work, we need to figure out, do people want to stay on that committee? Do they want to add new voices to the committee? And then can we, through resolution, provide some direction and maybe even some resources to that committee to answer some of the questions that are being asked of us constantly about this? So again, how many rental units do we have in Albion? What are the conditions currently across the city when it comes to rental units? What is the city's relationship with landlords? Because at the moment, it doesn't feel so good. And then have that committee actually do some work and bring back some facts and figures and develop a policy, an improved policy that actually creates something that works for everybody. And again, not everyone has to be happy. I still think the landlords aren't going to want to pay a fee every 3 to 5 years or however this works. But we need to say that housing is a priority in our community, and for the least of those who can't afford what some of us can, we need to make sure that it's a safe and healthy living environment for all of our community members.
Councilwoman Clark.
I forgot. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can go ahead, and then I'll go.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that during the study session, I believe that was last week, there were some wonderful ideas and suggestions brought up. One of the ones being, I believe Dr. Dobbins did state that a registration process should be an absolute. We should probably know how many rental units we have in Albion. And I think that is a great start for the registration process, and that it should be done one time and one time only, because once you register, you're registered. And if a landlord were to sell, I'm sure they would notify us, because they wouldn't want the responsibility of another landlord being tied to them with their name. So I don't think notifying us when you sell is going to be a problem. I think they would be glad to notify us. I no longer own that. Don't come to me with that. I'm not fixing anything. So so I think that piece is very good and should be a part of this process. And that being said, there were some other suggestions and ideas that came out at the study session. And it's good to know that other council members, because I remember Councilwoman Clark took the name or a card of someone was there, and she was going to reach out to them. I don't know if you did that or not, but it's good to know that other council members want to have input with the committee to get this thing right. And I think that the committee should sit down with the landlords again, short of, no fee for certification. I don't know how they're going to be happy. I know code enforcement is a big issue, but I don't know if the landlord has a board that the committee could meet with, and I don't know, for vice president, or whatever, and sit down and have an open dialogue about what this certification process could possibly look like, and with expenses attached or not, and code enforcement as a part of that process. So I think that having that study session was a good idea, and it has taken us, I think this committee has been in existence for, 16, 18 months, however long. But it's like, this is, touchy subject, shaky ground, and we don't want to rush to judgment. We want to proceed with caution. And so your comments and your ideas are welcomed, and we want to hear them, because we want to have a process that is inclusive and looks at and considers everyone. I mean, there are renters who haven't come to the meeting, who approached me and said, you know, they won't come out and speak out about their landlords and how they live in this shabby condition, and they're not going to report it because they don't want to be penalized or by their landlord. So I think that, you know, we got to find a happy medium here somewhere, and how that happens only through discussion and dialogue. So that's where I'm at with that.
I'm frustrated because it has been, I think, 18 months, 16 months. And I'm going to say the same thing I said last week. A lot of great things were said, a lot of good ideas, and you just, you know, acknowledge that. My frustration is the landlord does have an association. The landlords have met, I think even you said 4 or 5 times. And so I'm sitting back shaking my head when it's as though, gee, those were great ideas. Wish we'd have known about them before. Those things have been put forth time and time again. And to say, well, maybe there is a board, maybe they got a president, maybe they don't have, I mean, I don't know who you've been meeting with if you haven't heard these things. And so that's why I'm saying, yeah, we need to take another look at this to get it right. We need some fresh faces on that committee, because these folks have been talking for 18 months. And to sit there and come up to express that these are somehow new things, that these haven't been brought up over the past 18 months, just is not accurate. So we need a different committee. And if one or more people want to remain on the committee, I think that would be fine. But we need some new faces on the committee, because 18 months, they've been saying the same thing for 18 months. They're getting very frustrated, okay? Councilwoman Clark.
Another thing that I remember from the meeting is when Dr. Dobbins had talked about, you mentioned it, about the registration. Yep, the registration. And I think that's a real big thing to get things certified. And I would also like to see us use that as a marketing tool, because we're looking at Albion as it is right now. I'm a visionary, so I see where we are now, but I also see where the landlords in about 5 years from now, yes, you'll have your low-income housing for the ones, the people that can't afford to pay certain fees, but I can also see you even maybe in advancing towards having other homes where you can charge larger amounts of money because you're able to buy more housing, or because we have all this land available that is not being used, and possibly being able to put more structures on there. And then we could use that as a marketing tool when we get people registered, to know when they're coming into town, you know, how to contact, because let's face it, if people aren't registered and we don't have good landlords to say that this is where you're going, or don't take care of the ones that are not doing a good job, then it's like one bad seed. How does it go? Some spoils the apple. I don't know. That's one of my mama's saying. But so I look at it as a marketing thing. And then another thing, right, correct. And then another thing, as far as recertification and us having older houses, I understand the concerns about things that are going on in older houses, and I get that. But there is certain rules about grandfathering things in. So what that means, if you're looking up setting something up, if the structure, if it's sound and it doesn't cause a problem, then things can be qualified as grandfathered in. A good example is if you buy a property and it has so many plugs in it, and you don't necessarily have to put more plugs in at that time because it was grandfathered in. If everything is working, if you stick a thing in the plug and it works the way it's supposed to, then those are other things that can be considered. So please don't think that just because we're talking about making sure things are running correctly, that it means that you have to spend a lot of money. Sir, I was an inspector myself. I've done this before, and a lot of the things that that I work with the landlords with about that needed to be improved, there was a time limit that was given to them. It was taken care of, and it didn't cause anybody any heartache. Sometimes it's just simple things. So there is such things as grandfathering things in. I do understand your concerns, because I live in an older house myself. But at the same token, we want to consider, we don't want to not do anything about something, and then some family lives in a home and the electrical system catches on fire and they lose everything in the house. That's not a win-win for anybody. And that could possibly happen. So, because I know my house, the wiring is terrible,
Sure.
so I'm taking care of it. So, I hear you, Mayor, about having some fresh eyes. I did say that I'd agree to work with them. I think they've been doing a pretty good job. Sometimes it does take fresh ears to hear what other people are saying, so we can move forward, because we need to get this done.
Councilman Smith?
One thing I would like to point out is, we keep talking about how bad the rental properties are in Albion. I would say probably, okay, let's just give it a minimum of 50% of the bad properties we see as we drive around Albion. And it has been pointed out by a gentleman in the audience that you can drive through Albion, and in 3 hours you can lay your eyes on every single property in this city. We aren't that big, so it's easy to do. Probably 50% of the bad properties you're going to see are owner-occupied, not rental properties. I would say a number of the houses that they look like they're gray, but it's just bare wood that hasn't been painted in eons. Those are probably owner-occupied property or vacant with absentee owners. And there are ways to find those as well, we've been told at the study session by a gentleman in the real estate business. So we need to back off the idea that every nasty property in Albion is a rental, because they're not. I'm going to read a statement into our record that has been prepared, and a few people have asked me to do this. In this year of 2020, the city of Albion is standing at the doorstep of real positive economic possibility. Large investment is coming into our area, the likes of which we have not seen in the last 2 decades. As a city, we collectively stand at the crossroads. We can turn left down the road of rental certification, following countless other Michigan cities and municipalities into an abyss of troubles, lost rental properties, forced gentrification, and loss of housing for those that the program purports to protect in the first place. Stemming from fees, fines, and forced costs foisted on the backs of local landlords that try to comply with the myriad of licenses, permits, high repair, and upgrade costs from forced use of licensed contractors that are non-existent in our town anyway. As examples, the city of Penfield near Battle Creek had to reverse their program due to large loss of their tax base. The city of Detroit can't garner more than 10% compliance because of the bad guys aren't going to register, are bogged down in a sea of unpaid violations, red tape, legal fees, and a growing number of abandoned properties. Why do the sponsors and supporters of this proposed ordinance feel this is needed in Albion at this time? Is there an abundance of complaints being lodged against unscrupulous slumlords? In the past 5 years, the highest number of tenant-generated complaints based specific to rental living conditions was 18 in 2015, only 18. The lowest was 13 in 2018. So that can't be it. Do we have a large number of infants and pets being poisoned by lead-based paint and asbestos exposure? None are being reported. Due to a large number of rental properties openly show a lack of, do a large number of rental properties openly show a lack of upkeep, squalor, poor yard maintenance, and trashy conditions? First, are we sure these properties are rental and not owner occupied? Secondly, if the property is rental, are we sure those conditions are not caused by the tenant that doesn't care about the condition of the property because it ain't mine, why should I care? Why do we need rental certification now? Reading through the proposed regulations, nothing is put forth that isn't already within the Albion Code of Ordinances. So what do we actually gain? Drive down any number of streets in Albion, and you're treated to a gross number of houses with chipping, fading paint to the point of being bare wood. How many of these are rental property and how many are owner occupied? Why are these code violations allowed to continue? Codes can be enforced without causing all the hardship on Albion's residents and business owners. There's a term for you, business owners. If you don't believe the title of rental property owner or landlord means you're in a business situation, please enroll in a Business 101 class at Albion College. The first rule of business means you are there to make a profit. Most landlords in and around Albion are your friends and neighbors. Tell me, do any of them look like they're getting wealthy from this? Let me answer that for you. No. Most landlords are operating on a shoestring. Most make enough from a rental income to pay the mortgage and taxes and make a little extra to put aside for needed repairs to the property as they arise. Logically, any and all added costs, fees, and upgrades that will be required by inspectors, there's another fee, will be added to the price of the rent to the tenant. You can call this the built-in gentrification of certification. You won't get one without the other. The other option is for the landlord to abandon the property and let it fall into further disrepair and displacing the tenant. The property will be picked up by the land bank, go through years of legal processing, getting worse from squatters, drug users, and urban miners. Eventually, it will be torn down, leaving one more empty lot for Albion to deal with. The Director of Code Enforcement also believes Albion should contract out the inspection services to Cornerstone Inspection Services of Athens, Michigan. This takes all inspection dollars that would have to be paid by our landlords. Fees will be charged by the unit, not by the building, not only out of our town, but also out of our state, as Cornerstone has been purchased by Safe Built out of Loveland, Colorado, and it is a sure bet they won't care about Albion other than to get our dollars. Remember that crossroads? What could happen if we turn right? Instead of passing rental certification, make some changes to the present situation. First, our city manager can work with and instruct our code enforcement director and his staff to refamiliarize themselves with the ordinances that lay dormant on our books now. Allow them to start fresh and to actively enforce the codes fairly across the board and across the city to all dwellings, owner-occupied and rental property alike. Second, establish an open partnership and dialogue with the Albion Rental Property Owners Association. This can result in a self-policing organization that will weed out the unscrupulous and unwilling property owners from within. This could result in a much lower future cost for Albion in code enforcement and legal fees, and a brighter future for all of Albion's residents without fear of housing loss and displacement in our community. Isn't that the goal anyway? Thank you.
Any other comments by council? Councilman Williamson.
So again, we're not going to be making a rental certification tonight, but I want to share that my intention after tonight's meeting is to work with the great councilwoman from Precinct 1 to bring about a resolution to the floor at the next meeting to talk about what we can do with code enforcement, whether that be a work group, a committee, something to pass and say, because something universally throughout all of the discussions we've had the entire 18 months is that people are unhappy with code enforcement. So if that's step one, then Councilwoman Clark and I will be bringing a resolution to the next council meeting to establish either a committee, a task force, a work group, something to work with Director Tracy and his team around code enforcement, and maybe begin to have priorities to council when it comes to code enforcement. The second thing that I would like to ask the folks who are on the committee who work really, really hard to tackle rental certification in the community, like we said, 18 months now, it would be interesting to have them work with the mayor or the city manager to bring about some recommendations moving forward, whether that be some new things they want to look at on the committee, some resources they might need to study the issues in Albion. You know, it costs money to find out what the problems are, and maybe there are some solutions that we can fund so that committee actually has the facts and data, because that is the other piece that folks are aggravated about. Not only landlords and renters, but council people. We are talking in like, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's whatever. Maybe we should find out what it actually is. That way, we're making some data-driven decisions. And I think this committee is exhausted. I know, and maybe there does need to be some different people there. But I think it's on them to bring up what should be our next steps in moving this process forward. And I trust that after countless meetings, after the study session we had last week, that there are probably some fresh recommendations that that committee can bring moving forward to give us some more time to make better policy. So I'm committed, again, to bringing, with Ms. Clark, a proposal to council to start talking about code enforcement in a really serious and aggressive way, and kind of work on that. And I'm hoping that the committee can commit to bringing back some recommendations about how we're going to move forward with the actual rental certification itself. I yield.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Spicer.
I think this is my last one. I did speak with City Manager McCleary regarding the Rental Certification Committee, and he does, did you want to say anything, City Manager, about the rental certification?
Well, I'm waiting to see where this goes. If both of these issues are going back to committee, I look forward to having those types of discussions in a committee setting where it's a little more informal, and we can talk about openly and honestly and directly with interested citizens. So I would hold my comments to that, but feel free to share whatever we've discussed.
I mean, it was just a brief conversation that we had, in fact, just this week, and it's only 2 days, that he also thought that there were some great ideas that came out of the study session that he thought should be included in the rental certification ordinance, as well as getting together with the landlords and the people who made some suggestions at the study session that he'd like to follow up on. So our city manager has experienced twofold. He was a landlord, and he was a manager in 2 cities that have rental registration certifications. So he brings some unique experience to the group, the study session, the rental registration certification group that we didn't have previously. So I'm thinking that moving forward with his experience and knowledge, that we can come to some great resolution to this issue.
Councilwoman Clark.
So I agree. I will work with you, Shane, on that, on the code enforcement. And also, as a city manager, there was a couple people, I guess they were from the Muskegon area, or at the meeting before, was it the Muskegon area? Do you remember that?
Grand Rapids.
Where they had talked about when they put a certification in place, and how it doesn't have to be the, quote, the way that most people think that other cities have put it in place. That's why I'm asking for the landlords to be a part of it. We can create our own. It's not something that's cut in stone that has to be the way everybody else has done it. And so I remember asking you if you would do some research with that, on that, as far as how they did theirs and how it became successful. So maybe that's something that you can bring back to the next meeting as to help the committee going forward. And I just feel like, you know, there is a lot of people disgruntled and upset about this, and I understand that. But at the same time, I believe that We have a great city here, and we will be able to work through this and come to a good balance. And yes, there is owner property that needs to be corrected, and I feel that strongly, that's why I said, when you ride through the city, everyone's house should look the same, because I agree with that. I don't think it's just landlords. I believe some of the people in the city need to take care of their homes as well. So we will work with the gentleman, Mr. Tracy, and we will get this settled, and all parties will be comfortable. Is a good word.
Thank you. Are there any further comments by council? Okay, next item. To approve the engagement letter from Maynard Cortison PC dated January 3rd, 2020, as presented, to perform and report the annual audit of the City of Albion's financial records for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, at a cost not to exceed $34,300, and authorize the finance director, treasurer to execute all necessary documents on behalf of the city relating to the engagement letter and the auditing services provided thereunder. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there, okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Domingo, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, request approval of the Verizon wireless agreement. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
This is for approving the Verizon wireless agreement, of which we have a copy.
Oh, did we move the Juneteenth discussion, or?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that, thank you.
City Attorney.
So what you have before you, oh, do you want?
Oh, I did need somebody to second the motion.
Second.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
So what you have before you is part one of what's gonna be a two-part, agreement. I believe it was last year, actually Verizon approached the city with, a previous site access agreement, and, there were some internal changes with Verizon. That site access agreement, was good for a specified period of time and lapsed because they had some things going on and they never moved on it. They're ready to move forward now, and as a prelude to determining site suitability, they need to go in and check the environmentals, check where they can place their equipment. This agreement, I believe, is limited to either them entering into the formal contract with us in terms of a time period. I think it was 6 months, execution of a lease agreement for any part of the property, decision by them that it's unsuitable, or 180 days after the agreement. So this is just for them to go in and basically take a look-see and make sure it's suitable for their equipment, and they will restore the, assuming, you know, they do any testing or whatever, they'll restore the site as nearly as practicable to its original condition. There's no cost to the city associated with this. I'm still in the process of negotiating the language of the proposed agreement to bring back to council. That's not ready to go yet, but they did want to do this part because they do have a timetable they're trying to keep.
Are there any questions or further discussion? Okay. Mr. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Okay, next item, request approval of boards and commission appointments. Mr. Ben Wallace, initial appointment to the Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors for the Workforce Development, term to expire at the completion of the project. Mr. Paul Cohen for the Recreation Commission, or Pastor Paul Cohen, initial appointment, term to expire on the 21st of February, 2023. And Dr. Andy French on the Recreation Commission, initial appointment, term to expire the 21st of February, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, oh, Councilwoman Spicer.
Just a quick question, are you still accepting names for the recreation?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, it's been moved. Any further questions or discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the 3 appointments and confirming those, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay. Okay, item I, request approval of resolution 2020-11 to conditionally approve the Peabody New Grass Festival. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it is approved. All right. Future agenda items, one of which would be for council to set the fee. Councilman Williamson.
So I was gonna say, we need to address the special event fee in the fee schedule. It's something that wasn't addressed when we passed the ordinance for special permits to do events on public property. And then the other thing I want to add is, of course, Councilwoman Clark and I are going to be bringing some resolution or action item for code enforcement, and we'll work with the city manager over the next 2 weeks to get that hammered out.
Okay. Other council members? Okay.
Put Juneteenth back on for next meeting.
Okay. Any other future agenda items? Okay. Public comments. Please come forward, give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Mark Goodman. I live in Franklin, Michigan. My family owns Greenhouse Farms. Greenhouse Farms is a medical cannabis grow operation and processing operation on Elliott Street. We also have a provisioning center on Eaton Street. The city of Albion was kind enough to grant us licenses for medical cannabis on Elliott Street for 18,000 plants, and a processing license also on Elliott Street, and a license for a provisioning center on Eaton Street. That was about a year ago, and part of the problem that we've had getting really going with the project is that the cannabis industry has gone through huge upheaval in the last 12, 13 months. Part of the upheaval has been the introduction of recreational use cannabis. It doesn't sound as though it would have such a big impact, but what actually happens is people all around Albion, in the cities all around Albion, Ann Arbor, Jackson, Parma Township, up and down 94, have passed recreational use cannabis ordinances. And people are just not going to waste their time getting medical marijuana cards to buy cannabis. They're going to go to where they can walk in the front door, do their business, and walk out. I'm here because we've had a very substantial investment in Albion. There is opportunity. You know, I've heard numerous times about how the economic situation in Albion is improving. This grow and processing, you're looking at somewhere between 80 and 150 jobs. And these jobs are fairly well-paying jobs, $15 to $20 an hour or more, plus benefits. The provisioning center will easily handle between 20 and 35 jobs, about half full-time, half part-time, and paying the same kinds of money. The real thing is I need to be able to request the city to pass a recreational use ordinance and to convert my licenses to recreational use licenses. And that's what I'm here to ask. Any questions?
You're out of time, sir. Thank you. further comments this evening?
All right, back on this rental certification thing. James Stahl, Jim Stahl, address 27780 H Drive North, live outside town. Rental properties 900 South Superior. Mr. Williamson mentioned that complaints aren't the way to go on enforcement. Well, you know, I think it is the way to go. That's the only way to really go, because how are you going to know if there's a problem if you don't if somebody doesn't complain? You're just going to go nitpick at people? I'm saying that is the way to go. You know, do it on a basis where the people complain, and that's what you do. You take care of it. That's how you find out. You don't just harass everybody else and get into everybody else's pocket. Everything else I've noticed was when we move forward, we want to get this done. We want to get this done. We want to move forward. I want to move forward too. I want to get rid of it. That's what I don't want to get it done and enforce it. And we don't need it, is what I'm getting at. We don't need it. You're making something we don't need. The city manager here wants to get a hold of that money. That's what he wants.
Sir?
Yeah.
Don't impugn the city manager or any member of council, please.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, he's been in, like she said, he's been in cities with it before. He liked it, obviously liked it. He's pushing for it because it gives him revenue. It's all about the revenue. It's all about getting into my pocket. That's what it's about. There's no other reason in this town. There's not been any, like the letter that Mr. Smith read there about the complaints, or the actions that have happened. Anything that burned down, anything that was a big problem, there hadn't been any. There's nothing wrong with it. The system we have is good. Enforce the code you got with the code enforcement crew you got. We don't need to hire more employees to do other things. You got enough. Take care of it. You know, quit overlooking, like he said, also about the properties that aren't rental properties. All the problems in this town aren't rental property problems. There's a lot of rat traps out there, and they aren't all necessarily rental properties. You know, I spend what I can on it. We aren't making a killing here. We aren't making a killing on these rental properties. I'm lucky I break even. Most of the time I don't. You shouldn't have a problem finding who the rentals are or how they are if they file property taxes in the city of Albion. I mean, you can tell who's filing their Schedule A's or whatever they file for their rentals. You know who the rental property owners are. Talk to them. Quit when you have rental landlords come and talk to you about things. Listen to them. Don't just blow it off and keep going with I want to get it done. I want to get it done. Let's get it done, but let's listen to the guys that are telling you. Most of it's unneeded. Most of it's unneeded. Mr. Dobbins, good points. Register them. So what? Doesn't cost us anything. Stay out of our pocket. That's all I'm getting at. Stay out of my pocket. I got enough problems. I don't need more. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the thoughtful discussion this evening. I think it was very positive and look forward to working on that. Number two, public apology to the city manager for a disparaging remark that I made out of frustration, and I take that back and apologize. Thank you.
Sir?
Luis, 917 Luther Drive. I'm glad to see that two of you council members are going to do something about the code enforcement. I really think that's where the problem lies, if we can bring that up where it should be. Do we keep stats on code enforcement, like for years, so you can go back and see how many? I'm just curious if you keep stats.
Albert Amos, 400 Baroque Street, Albion, Michigan. And it seems to be an illusion that I'm seeing, and that's that the problem that Albion has is rental properties. And I'm not so sure that's a fact. I think that City Council should find out how many properties exist in Albion. I think City Council need to find out how many of those properties are rental properties and how many of them are owned, citizen owned. I think that they should look at the properties and see the state of the properties, whether it be a rental property or whether it be one owned, personally owned. And so we can better understand where the dilemma is. I think we also need to, as a council, find out what is the true issue, what is the true complaint. I mean, we are talking about making new legislation for something I believe that already exists, but what's the true complaint? I mean, do we have A, B, C that's listed as true complaints? Are the ceilings falling down? Is the water bagging up in the basement? Is that lead paint that's killing the kids, giving them brain damage? I mean, what's the true complaint? Or are we just in desire of making new legislation so that we can have additional laws to accomplish something that we haven't been able to accomplish with the laws that already exist? And then I think also that if City Council, because I don't believe that we've done it, if City Council would look at the codes that already exist, whether it be through the State of Michigan Health Department, whether it's the Albion Enforcement Code or the other codes that already exist that's on the books for us to use, if we would look at them and see how they compare to what it is that you desire to see in the new legislation that you're trying to bring forth, maybe we can accomplish what we're trying to accomplish without additional legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Stewart, 205 West Oak Street. And I said it, first of all, I want to say I support, I want the council in general, I want to encourage you when somebody like the Malleable comes forward, and you did tonight, you supported the Malleable. That's really important to me as a small business owner, because when things happen in Albion, even if they're not at my store, it helps. People walk across. So we had something at Sterling where people came in and afterwards they left and they went to dinner at other places. So it's really important to me that when somebody has a good idea, that we try our best to support it as long as it's not harmful. So I appreciate your support for that Malleable project. On the rental certification, I'm really discouraged, and it's because we continue to say that it's rental certification, what the gentleman before me was saying. I'm discouraged because when I said I wasn't being heard the other night, and it's like you're not hearing, I mean it, because I'm not saying rental certification is a bad thing. I'm saying it's an unnecessary thing if we simply enforce our codes right now. And so I want to encourage us to go down that path. And if it doesn't work and we don't see the results we want, then talk about rental certification. But I have spent so many hours trying to have these conversations, I'm really discouraged. It makes me want to, I'm not exaggerating when I say it makes me want to quit and move away. I'm so tired of it. And we heard it from other people who are new investors in town. They don't want to come because we keep beating this. We're not fixing the root cause of the problem, and instead we're talking everything to death. So when I say I'm not being heard, that's what I mean. Can we please fix the thing that's broken? And then if that doesn't fix the problem, let's talk about rental certification. I guarantee you on the RPOA, no one will argue with that. If we do the enforcement the way we're supposed to, and it doesn't fix the problem, and we need to find something else, we're right on it with you. And by the way, the landlords do pay their fair share of code enforcement. We pay taxes on our properties. So every property I have, I pay taxes, just like the person who lives next who isn't a rental property owner. So I want my darn enforcement. I want it done right. I'm paying for that. Every time I pay taxes, I'm paying for that. So don't tell me that landlords aren't paying their fair share. And then, Ms. Spicer, with all due respect, if we know some place that has a health issue, we need to report that. So I do think that there's a lot that can be done with reporting. And if there's a way we can do it so that we're not harming the people who are in the property, I'd like to find a way to do that. And I don't think it's through the city office. I think there's maybe another way. thank you, everybody, for trying. Thank you.
Brian Mull. I was just going to correct Jim on one thing. We all pay our taxes, and we pay a higher rate of tax because it's not homestead on a rental. So we pay actually more taxes than the homeowner. No problem with that, but we pay our taxes plus more. Councilman Clark, I was listening to you, and there were a couple things I noted of interest, and I appreciate, and I think we've been over this quite a bit tonight, was the uniformity. And I think that is one of the big things is on the Landlord Association that we've talked about on multiple occasions with ourselves is that, it's not fair to pick on the rental house when we have a very, rundown house next to us. And I agree that would be great. I think the rental certification won't address that problem. Now, the code enforcement will, but not rental certification in and of itself. The second thing, and I think you have a great handle on this, you said, my house wiring is old and I'm working on it. Great, I'm glad you know it's a problem. I think education is a better way to handle this. Educate the tenants, and if you do have a problem, go to code enforcement, go to somebody. There are resources out there. We don't want anybody harmed. I know from our business, we feel very strongly about this. It's the highest priority, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. But I think education, if somebody's got bad wiring, there's something going on with the sewer, have them come forward. And, maybe there's a way to do that more anonymously, so if they feel threatened or whatnot. But the bottom line is just lumping this all into rental registration will not fix the problem of the uniformity, which I truly love that. I think that's a great point to fix all of the Albion, not just pick on the landlords. So thank you very much.
Cheryl Mall. I just want to tell you that we do appreciate that we're all working toward the same goal, or at least I assume we are, which is Albion. When we get emotional, it's because we're passionate about Albion. You have a lot of small business owners here. They've invested hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that we sweat and dig in the dirt and try and make things look nice. So we are passionate because our heart and soul has been poured into this town. And to expect us to sit back and not defend or protect what we've been working for would be absolutely against everything we stand and everything that we hope Albion stands for as well. Because we like it here in Albion, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And we want to make Albion a place where people want to be. Thank you.
You have any other public comments this evening?
Juanita Solis Kidder, 1211 Edward Street, and all that home improvement stuff is around my neighborhood, and I'm so happy, which I told you last time about it. But I'm here on behalf of Citizens to Beautify Albion to thank everybody that's here that supported us and so many people in the community. We had a very successful event, and ultimately the funds raised go to Beautify Albion, and we are counting on that and the volunteers. And along with beautiful homes and improved properties, we make Albion beautiful with our flowers. So thank you, everybody that participated in all of that. And hope to see you May 23rd when we do our planting, and in the summertime when you can get your hands dirty and weed. That's where we need help. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol Smith, 1209 Adams Street. I'm going to switch gears on you here. In regards to medical marijuana, from previous discussions that we were all involved in, it was a hard fight to get medical marijuana. Most of us were fine with the growing and the processing. Most of us did not want provisioning centers. We all knew at the time that the possibility of recreational was coming. most of us knew it was going to happen and it was going to nullify medical marijuana. So I would just like to remind you that we discussed when that happened that we would not allow them to convert medical to recreational. Thank you.
Do we have other public comments this evening? If not, I'll invite our county commissioner.
Absolutely. At the call. With a smile, always. Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. McCleary, City Manager, and Clerk Domingo, the residents of the City of Albion, and folks watching this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your County Commissioner. It's always great to be with you. I'll be extremely brief. I know we're late, so promise me, I promise you I will be brief. First and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about this Thursday night at our County Commissioners meeting. We'll be possibly, most likely, be approving ballot language for the senior millage renewal. That you'll be seeing on your August ballot. Obviously, in my position, I'm not going to advocate. I can't advocate anything for it other than just give you the facts that you'll be seeing that on your ballot, most likely in the August primary for a senior millage renewal. On a personal note, certainly, I want to certainly express our sincere condolences, certainly to the family of Judge Conrad Sent, who tragically passed away here recently. As a matter of fact, on that previous Friday, I had a chance to talk to him for about 7 minutes, and you really don't realize when you just have those conversations and you walk away, and yet those things can happen. So again, I want to express certainly a condolences to the family of Judge Conrad Sent, certainly thinking about him and his family. On another note, most of you are aware that Ann Norlander, who was our Clerk and Register of Deeds for 30 plus years in Calhoun County, longest serving Clerk and Register of Deeds, retired January 31st, as a matter of fact, after 30 plus years of service. And at that point in time, went through a process of appointing or looking for a person to appoint. And on February 11th, Kimberly Hinckley was appointed as our new Clerk and Register of Deeds. She took the oath of office again February 11th, and she will be running in the November election. And we're very, very confident that Kimberly will continue the tradition of doing a great job, certainly at the Clerk and Register of Deeds. And then most of you very much are well known that our Sheriff, Matt Saxton, will be retiring effective April 18th from Calhoun County after 26 years of service, 7 years within the sheriff as being our Sheriff, to move on to become Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association. So again, we want to take the opportunity to appreciate and certainly recognize him for his years of service here at Calhoun County and wish him well. Again, that position will also go through an appointment process, so you'll be seeing that happen here in March. So you'll be going through a 3-member panel that will review, and that appointment will be made, and whoever that person will be, I'm sure will be able to successfully continue the tradition, certainly at the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department. So look at there. How's that for tonight, huh? A little under 3 minutes, huh? Pretty good, guys. Yeah.
Stunning.
You like that? I know. Thank you. Absolutely. I will continue to say, certainly, for those of you that have called your representatives, continue doing it. It's doing a lot of good when we talk about roads. So just continue doing that. And also make sure March 12th to fill out your census forms. It's very, very important that the census gets taken care of so that we're adequately counted. All right? Thank you. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, City Manager, your report, sir.
Your Honor, members of council, you've received the city manager's report. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the North Albion Street Bridge. We received information from our bridge inspection engineer recommending that we reduce the traveling lanes on the bridge by 6 feet on each side of the bridge from the sidewalk curb in, which would result in an access lane with a width of 18 feet. The reason for the lane reduction is to maintain current load limits on the bridge by directing traffic to the center supports of the bridge that are still in relatively good shape. It is the outer supports that are not in good shape. This lane reduction may require motorists to yield to oncoming traffic that is already traversing the bridge. So yield signs will be installed immediately before the bridge approach in each direction. Appropriate lightweight barricades, for example, construction barrels, will be placed to direct traffic to the center of the bridge. The alternative to these measures would be to do nothing, which would require reducing the approved load limit on the bridge to 4 tons, and that would eliminate access across the bridge for most heavy-duty pickup trucks and larger vehicles. Our public safety chief is preparing a temporary traffic control order that will take effect immediately and is good for 90 days. City Council will need to approve a permanent traffic control order, and that will be done hopefully at your next meeting. The Department of Public Services will be installing the barricades and signage at the bridge shortly. I provided you with an update on the solid waste collection services contract. I have had a meeting with the contractor. They are preparing an initial proposal that I expect to receive this week, and then we will be having further discussions. We are working to try to get a meeting set up of the Sidewalk Program Fund Review Committee, and I will keep council updated on that work as we move along. I do want to note in response to the comments that were made tonight about recreational marijuana, after voters approved recreational marijuana in the state in November 2018, the council shortly thereafter opted out of recreational marijuana in the community, but the council did adopt a resolution stating that the council would take up consideration of recreational marijuana within 60 days after the state adopted emergency rules. Those rules went into effect in early July of last year. So I look for direction from the council as to whether or not you want me to bring this back to you at an upcoming meeting so that we can revisit that issue.
Sir, if you yield for a moment, I'll ask the city attorney to comment on that.
So, at a point, and I'm still trying to find the specific meeting that we did it at, and the clerk and I will confer and figure that out, but we did have that discussion at a subsequent meeting, and to my recollection, the discussion at that meeting was some of the larger municipalities, Lansing, Ann Arbor, I know one of my other communities in Jackson County are starting to put in place. In fact, I was at a meeting today with the Lansing city attorney that indicated they had just issued their first set of recreational licenses. And one of the things that I said to council is, before we craft an ordinance, it would probably behoove us to see what is working for those larger municipalities and what isn't, rather than having to put something in place and kind of learn by doing, which is always a somewhat dangerous thing in an unknown field. So that was kind of how we left that. We did have that discussion, but that was how we left it, is let's give it a little bit of time and then come back and revisit it after we see what's working for those larger municipalities that already have something in place.
Please continue.
So I will wait for council to provide further direction on that matter. Once again, I want to encourage people to come to my after hours. They're held on Thursdays from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. in 30-minute increments by appointment. Last week, I did have a good turnout by residents and some employees, actually, so I appreciated the opportunity to meet with people, and I really do enjoy it. So if the regular City Hall hours don't work for you, please feel free to set up a time to meet with me on Thursdays between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. I'd be happy to accommodate you. Mayor, I provided a list of some of the upcoming agenda items that council should be aware of. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay. Mayor and council member comments. Council members have comments this evening? Oh. Comments by council members. Okay. I want to thank everybody for turning out and expressing your opinions in a nice, calm fashion. appreciate that very much. And it's important that we find a good solution that addresses everybody's concerns. And I think Councilwoman Williamson is probably spot on. When we get to the point where everybody's not happy, but I can live with it, then that's about as good as we're going to be able to get. And so whatever that final solution is going to be and how we proceed, yet to be determined. So appreciate you all showing up for that. Appreciate council participating and asking those questions. And other than that, may I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Lawler?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. No opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
So, what time is that?
You too, sir.
Can I give